Lightning Strike Studio presents.
There's new podcast and stuff. Hey everybody, guess who's back? Yes, your favorite podcasting person. I have nothing else right now. Welcome to episode 8 of Larry's new wrestling podcast and stuff. Once again, we're back for your entertainment, for your quarantine, I don't know what we call me, for your quarantine needs. We're here live in the front seat, passenger side this time. I'm trying different angles, folks. We're trying different lighting. We're doing everything we can to provide you with the best wrestling podcast in circulation today. Yes, we are on iTunes. We're on YouTube. If you're visually watching this, you're watching it on YouTube maybe. Or from our Facebook following. Or, it doesn't matter. I'm sorry, see, I just did the Dwayne Johnson. The Rock. Just in case you forgot his real name. Get it? Okay. His real name is Dwayne Johnson. But the wrestling fans knew him as the past tense. The Rock. And he actually technically was Rocky Maivia when he first started. And because he was taking his last name and paying homage to his to his grandfather and the High Chief, Peter Maivia. And his father was the Soul Man, Rocky Johnson. So a little bit of both of them, he became Rocky Maivia. And he wore like this Amazonian jungle-looking type outfit when he first came and debuted a Survivor Series. I believe it was 1996, 5 or 6. Anyways, we're not talking about Dwayne Johnson today. He's probably mad at John Cena for having a part with Vin Diesel, since Vin Diesel wanted to kind of say, hey, yeah, we can get someone to replace you, Rocky. We got John Cena. And I just did the hand wave in front of my face for those that are listening on iTunes. Anyways, we're back to focus, folks. This is what we're doing today. We're doing episode, I believe, we are at episode number 8. Yes, see, I have a glitch, folks. Today, we're releasing episode 8 to you, which is amazing because we're talking double that. We're talking about the 16 time. 16 times. I'm not going to do it 16 times, folks, because that would be too many times. We're talking about Ric Flair. Woo! The Nature Boy. The 16-time World Heavyweight Champion, even though he claims he may be 17 or 18 because of titles he may have won in Puerto Rico, which didn't get documented for whatever reason, because they don't like Puerto Rico. Don't tell my ex-friend that, who's Puerto Rican. Anyways, not going to give you a name acknowledgement, sir. You don't deserve it. Anyways, this podcast is live in living color for you right here on your, as Randy said, what you say, on your telescope. It wasn't telescope. It was on your kaleidoscope. No, I don't know. It was something scope. If you can tune in and tell me on the notes in the YouTube what he called that little telescope thing on the kaleidoscope, whatever the scope, that one. Thank you. Anyways, folks, we get a little sidetracked sometimes here on Larry's new wrestling podcast and stuff. And the reason why and stuff, folks, is because we talk about stuff outside of wrestling. Like, I hope you're out there being safe. We don't have a curfew right now, luckily this week, but last time I did the show, folks, we had to be in by 8 p.m. That is correct, 8 p.m. due to things that are occurring in our world. Now, we're not a political show, but we're going to let you know that the world is not so balanced right now. It's not so great. But don't be late for the new, not world order, but the new attitude era. No, that was a different time. That was the late 90s where you could say, suck it. We're not talking about that, folks. We're talking about an attitude of gratitude. A chance to change your life during this COVID and during this riotous time. It's a very different type of world we're living in right now, folks. But I'm here for you. And you're here for me, even though we're not physically here together. Because we're not there yet with that technology. But you could FaceTime if you have it. But some of you still own a flip phone. Why? Why would you own a flip phone in 2020? Other than my grandma, nobody should own a flip phone without a capability of recording on their phone like this. And I'll tell you right now, folks, it's a unique... Oh, I just blew my cover. Yes, I'm recording this right here from technology. To give to you, my listening audience, Someday I'll have a big studio, I promise you, with fancy cameras. But for now, this is it. God, someone out there help me. Anyways, I just wanted to subtly say thank you for your support. Thank you for everything you've been giving us. There's a Cash App on the bottom, though, if you'd like to donate to helping us get great guests on our show. Obviously, we could do some Zooming. We could do some conference calling. We could get them on the air, folks. We could get possibly celebrity, WWE, AEW, former World Wrestling Federation, former NWA type legit NWA, meaning Billy Corgan's NWA, old school NWA. I don't care. As long as you've worked in the world of professional wrestling and you're respected and you have a name, meaning you get a check from one of these big name companies, then we'd like to have you on our show. If your name is blah, 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 and we don't know who the hell you are, I'm sorry. You have to take a number, because we still want to get people that can help us, people who are looking for bigger jobs and bigger opportunities out there, to get it. So I want to learn from the best. I want to learn from the names that established professional wrestling. I want to learn from those that gave us, even current product or past, gave us something to enjoy. Even though the current product is lacking, I just listened to a Jim Cornette podcast. Shout out to Jim Cornette and the great Brian Last for having a great show. I listen to it every week. I learned a lot from it. So I got a little motivation to bring you this. And to give you an understanding that Jim Cornette is one of the most important minds in the history of professional wrestling. There's a lot of haters. But I tell you right now, if I was going to learn from anyone who would take me under their wing, it would be Jim Cornette. Because the man started in photography in wrestling at the age of 15, and he's taken his career and made his political views and some things that maybe I may or not disagree with. It doesn't matter. Freedom of speech. Jim Cornette can voice his opinion on why America's wrong on his podcast. And I can tell you, folks, it's okay. It's his God-given right. And for those of you that own businesses out there, doesn't matter the business, you should be able to say who owns it and show your face and not fear that people will loot you or people will not treat you with the same respect in this beautiful country we call America. Sometimes I don't feel like it's so free, folks, especially when you have a curfew. But I digress. I'm going off subject. Back to focus. Jim Cornette is one of the greatest minds of professional wrestling. And I've learned that he had the FTR, which is, I guess you could say, F the Revolt. Okay? Or it used to be F the Revival, but now they're called something different. It's F the Revolt, their new name in AEW. And I'll tell you right now, what they're going to be doing in AEW is they're going to be doing, like I went from AEW to AEW, even though it's a southern-based promotion out of Jacksonville, Florida, owned by a billionaire son by the name of Tony Khan, who I've met. And I tell you, folks, that this company still is missing pieces. But I hope with the Revival, a.k.a. F the Revolt, they're going to be able to get that ratings going in the right direction. They started out hot, but now they've cooled off. But now with this team, they can maybe bring something good to the table. The Young Bucks, who Jim Cornette doesn't like too much, I hope they can find more tag teams besides the Bucks and make the tag team division as good as it was in the early 90s, in my opinion, when Tully Blanchard, Art Anderson, the Brainbusters jumped over to WWF. Demolition was there. Hart Foundation, Jim, the Anvil Neidhart, Bret Hart. And that was right when they left Jimmy Hart. Also, the tag team division with Demolition being Axe, Smash, and Crush. That era, the Rockers were kind of phasing out, but they were still there. Everybody in that early 90s bracket, that was cool tag team wrestling that you could showcase at a WrestleMania, even more than just as a wash match. They were like featured wrestlers. Even though Bret and them should have been more down the card towards the main event, they were kind of mid-cardish, but they put on a great show, mid-card or not. They kept us engaged the whole show, not half the show. Every match in the old WrestleManias were important. People really wanted, they cared what Coco Beware and the Birdman was doing. Not like, whatever. He was entertaining. He had the bird. Frankie, he was dancing with him. He gave us something even in the beginning of the show, not just the end, where we had to focus on Hogan versus Andre on the Slam Heard round the world, folks, at WrestleMania 3. In Detroit, Michigan, where some of this editing takes place. Not Detroit, but, Michigan. Anyways, folks, I told you we get sidetracked here on Larry's new wrestling podcast and stuff, where we are today focusing on the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Let's get on it, folks. Let's talk about the documentary basically the farewell documentary that I watched today, and such an emotional, and I cried, I will admit it, it brought a tear to my eye. That's a Ric Flair line, folks. The Nature Boy Ric Flair, and I'm not wearing a shirt of the Nate, I'm wearing the Sheiky, baby. But I tell you, we love the Iron Sheik. I put you in the camel clutch. Ha! That's a very bad Iron Sheik impersonation. And you just reminded me I have to follow up with the people that made his documentary. Not you, but you, your brain. I tell you, my friends, you will not understand this show. You could keep trying to figure it out till your face turns any color but the color it is, and we're not going to get into that right now. We're going to let you know that we are back on track. We are focused. And we're going to talk about Ric Flair, the Nature Boy, the 16-time world heavyweight champion. And I'll tell you, one thing that he said, and I have to get it off my chest right now, because it's right in the front of my brain, and I don't want to forget it. But Ric Flair said something towards the end of the documentary that really, really messed with my head a little bit, because we always praise him for his greatness. But he said it simply, his career is he's won 16 matches, and he's lost 7,000 of them. I mean, think about that. I'm not good at math, and I'll admit it. That he lost 7,000 matches, but he won 16. That's crazy to think of it that way, but essentially a guy in his early 70s is giving us that sense of, hey, I'm just blessed to have had this life and this career. That is what it made me think about, and I was going to try to say that for the end, but I just couldn't, because it really hit me very, really close to the heart as I'm going through this transitional time in my life where I felt like I made a lot of stupid mistakes. But hey, you get back on that horse like the Four Horsemen, baby. Woo! Remember that show, The Price is Right? I said it, folks. I was on The Price is Right with Bob Barker, and the thing that I couldn't think of more than anything else, and I've said this to Ric Flair, but he didn't really care the first time I said it to him. Anyways, the whole point is, I said Four Horsemen on The Price is Right. If you can find it, folks, it's archived out there. I believe the date it aired was May 7, 1999, when I was on The Price is Right. You can find it somewhere out there. Footage of, at that time, folks, his gimmick was Little Larry, and he said, Four Horsemen, when he said pick a number in the show, on the show with the game, any number, which I hated that game. You can see it in my body language when I'm on the show. I tell Bob, after praising Bob, like the best thing next to, I don't know what. But the Bob Barker reaction I gave is rated in the top 10 funniest moments in the history of the show. I'm not blowing some smoke up your ass, folks. That's real. At one point, online, you could find a voting, or a top 10 list like David Letterman. And I was on that top 10 list of funniest moments in Price is Right history. But I guarantee you that this is what I'm doing right now, folks. I'm giving you a chance to experience one of the most unique, one of the most eccentric moments in the history of game shows. Watch that footage of Larry on The Price is Right. Cheap plug, cheap pop, I know, I did it. Anyways, back to focus. We're talking about the Nature Boy. So on the show, he asked me to say a number, the whole point of the story. And he said, Larry, give me a number. And I said, 4 Horsemen. He said, 4? You know, because he's hard of hearing, because he's, never mind. Bob said, you said 4, right? And I said, 4, yes, 4. So, but I gave a pop to the 4 Horsemen as a tribute to my appearance on national television, which was technically the first time Larry's on TV. I've been in commercials. I've been in documentary films. Not really big-time movies as a mainstream, but I was in the background in Jim Carrey's The Majestic. You can kind of see me in the beginning. Anyways, I'm not going through my IMDb, folks. You can look me up. I'm there. Larry Lawrence. The name's so nice, they named me twice. Okay? That's it. It's my parents' fault. Not going into details about the story. Anyways, let's continue to focus on the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Folks, this is what happens on Larry's new wrestling podcast and stuff. So, let's focus on this documentary, which follows the career of one of the greatest wrestlers in the history of wrestling, who definitely had the send-off of a lifetime. Unfortunately, he didn't officially retire after that. In 2008, he got back in the ring at TNA when Hulk Hogan was there. So I kind of blame Hogan for this, because they became boys over the years and decades. So when Hogan jumped over to TNA to try to make it the great company to counteract WWF again, this time, unfortunately, no money, no way, no how. Even when they brought Bischoff over, they couldn't do anything to give competition. Even going Monday nights, and unfortunately, even changing that after they went live on Monday to go head-to-head with Monday Night Raw. That tells you the mega power that the World Wrestling Federation is, folks. That Ric Flair, even with his name and Hogan's name, they could not sink the Titanic, stop basically the biggest name company in the history, which I will always call the WWF, because tonight was in your house and I was trying to watch the pay-per-view actually, but there had a lot of glitches on the network. Not trying to talk smack about the network, because I love the WWE network, which you can get now for you viewers that are low penny pinching. You can also get it for free. The WWE network is no longer $9.99. I believe as of tomorrow even. Or today, I don't know. All I know is it should be available to you for free. So please, research all these great documentaries. Research all the great content. Whatever's available for free. So you can also listen in when we review a show like Ric Flair's Farewell. That was a 24 documentary from the WWE documentary series, just like The Undertaker's Last Ride. They're bringing all this brand new content using old stock footage and mixing it into like current stuff they're making into a brand new product. So it's very smart because they have all this archive footage they can access Ric Flair's career throughout the decades and still bring it to present day with all the money they invested. Those libraries are very, very, very important in today's wrestling because they give us a look at the past with a little bit of a current twist, so that way we can actually enjoy the WWE Network from a different perspective, from the way that we really should be enjoying it and loving it, is being able to enjoy it for $9.99. Nope, it's free now, folks. That's so cool, especially during these COVID-19 times. I think they're just trying to keep fan interest. I mean, that's smart, because out of sight, out of mind, and I believe that move was done from not just a giving perspective, but the fact the viewership probably sucks now that no live fans can be there. You can't bring the kids to see their favorites. They haven't been able to see the Roman Reigns. They haven't been able to see John Cena because he's a movie star now. But still, not being able to attend live events has really been, I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to sound somber, but it sucks. It sucks, this COVID-19. It sucks that we're not able to go to live events, concerts, things that we enjoyed before this. But hey, we're getting through it, folks. We're going to get through this together. This is Larry's new wrestling podcast and stuff. And like I said, folks, we talk about everything. But let's talk about Ric Flair. Why is he the most important name in professional wrestling? Well, when I was at Great America in 1996, I also created a gimmick called Natroy. N-A-T-R-O-Y. Now, Natroy was a alien version Ferengi of what the Star Trek Deep Space Nine Ferengis that wanted gold press latinum. I didn't even know what that was until I got that job. And I'll tell you, it was the first paid acting gig I ever had, and it was so cool because I had the opportunity to be a really perverted, funny character, alien. It's just research Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the Ferengi, and you can figure out what type of character I had to play. A greedy, womanizing character. And the first name and figuratively, respectfully, I paid tribute to as an actor was Nature Boy. How did I do that? I called myself Natroy. Now, Natroy was letters removed from Nature Boy. And I created Natroy, a greedy, womanizing alien at Paramount's Great America, because Paramount owned Star Trek. So thus the theme park had the rights to create a created movie TV character for your loving enjoyment in 96, folks. There's pictures out there of me with these big ears. I should have got some photos to show you. Wasn't thinking. It's not reminiscing hour. It's Larry's new wrestling podcast. Enough about the past. Anyways, let's focus on the future and the past with Ric Flair talking about his life and the career the documentary focused on the greatest wrestling performer in the history of wrestling. If you watch a Ric Flair match, he's going to take you to school on what wrestling was like. Hogan was the bright lights and the big muscles and rock and wrestling of the 80s. Ric Flair was the womanizing, not PG rated, kind of potty mouth, said what he wanted, insulted fans. He did everything in the NWA that you couldn't have gotten away with in the World Wrestling Federation. So they were both product placed amazingly great. I'm so happy Ric Flair stayed in the territories in the 80s and didn't make his way to the WWF until the early 90s after he was a little bit older and he has left his 20s. And now the Ric Flair we got is the guy who's mature going into his... Actually, no, he left his 30s going into his 40s, I believe, by the time he got to WWF the first time around. But I believe, folks, he had done a lot of his early careers, the mid-70s to the early... Yeah, that's what it was. He started in 72, I believe, yes. Ric Flair debuted in 1972, and they don't really go over that part of his in this documentary, but he debuted in 1972, and all the way up until the early 90s, around late 91, he made his debut in WWF. So that's a long career, and I think he made cameos here and there as an NWA champion when it was the WWF, which was owned by Vince McMahon Sr. Once again, folks, the Wrestling Encyclopedia, right here, live, in front of your face if you're on YouTube, on iTunes if you're listening that way. I have so much knowledge to share with you from a fan's perspective who learned so much about the sport of wrestling just from being a fan. And I hope to share with you some of that knowledge if you're a fan or non-fan listening to this very podcast. So, folks, I'm going to tell you right now, Ric Flair is one of the greatest professional athletes. And I say athlete because he also was a football player in college. He was a very respected... Richard Fliehr is his real name. And I'll tell you, so many wrestlers can tell you, like Shawn Michaels, his real name is Sean Higginbottom or something like that. Anyways, he says, because he name drops it, he says Richard Fliehr to Shawn. Basically, he gives tribute to the fact that he was the last guy in the ring with him during that retirement match where Ric Flair had to retire in 2008 at WrestleMania. And he also was inducted in the Hall of Fame that same weekend. It was one of the most tremendous moments. And I remember I used to get emotional still watching that documentary. I remember how I used to feel. I used to watch that farewell ceremony over and over and over again because I couldn't believe Ric Flair was really gone. He had to retire until he resurfaced in TNA and got back in the ring, but it was nowhere near as special as getting a send-off by 70,000 people at WrestleMania, and then the very next night by your peers at the arena. In very much no other wrestler has had this type of send-off, where everyone from the back, referees, wrestling divas at the time they were called, and midgets, because Hornswoggle's right there in the front with his leprechaun outfit saying, "Hey, I love me Lucky Charms." That was a very bad impression of that dude from the cereal. Anyways, I love me Lucky Charms, or that bad evil movie with the horror movie, I Want Me Gold. What's the name of that damn movie? I forget. It's not Elf. That was the Will Ferrell Elf. That was such a horrible version, a tall-ass elf. Anyways, it's called Stuff, folks. It's called Stuff. So if you don't keep up with me, it's Larry's new wrestling podcast and stuff. So we talk about other stuff. You get it? Okay. Back to focus. Ric Flair. So this is what's going on, folks. This is one of the most tremendous retirements ever in the history of professional wrestling of the modern era. Because everyone from the back came out, stood up, and paid respect. Not just the old-timers, but the current roster in 2008, said thank you, Ric Flair, for your sacrifice. And even his daughter, who's conflicted within this documentary, in the beginning of it, she says, why couldn't he just walk away? Why couldn't he just leave the sport that he loves so much, that he would die for? He put his body, 36 years of wrestling up to that point in 2008. And then he would continue to do things that maybe he shouldn't have at his age, but even wrestling overseas with Hulk Hogan in Australia. A shell of themselves, but they were just trying to hold on to every last bit that they had. And so in the mid-10s, they were trying, but it just couldn't. It's like trying to spark something. It's like a car. It's like this Ford Escape. Needs some work, but it's like trying to keep it running, which it does. But at some point, you're finally going to say, whatever, we're done. We've got to walk away. But for now, she provides for a good studio. Anyways, let's focus that Ric Flair is the greatest name of all time, and he had a great, great send-off. And that was the best thing that I could have witnessed back 12 years ago in 2008. Crazy to think that was 12 years ago. In 2008, folks. Yes. 12 years ago, I was enjoying Ric Flair and not enjoying Ric Flair getting sent off into, we didn't know where. That's it. What is he going to do now? Is he going to be managed the new Four Horsemen? We didn't know. Nobody knew. It was just we knew that he was retiring, and we didn't know what storyline they were going to build from that. And he kind of disappeared for a little bit until he resurfaced in TNA. And then eventually came back to WWE through his daughter, and basically saying he regretted working at TNA. But I know that Ric Flair is definitely one of the greatest of all time, and know that will stay forever. It's just like The Undertaker. Now I'm watching that documentary, which next week it'll be back on again, and we'll be reviewing the latest episode of The Undertaker's Last Ride. Don't want to sidetrack, but just giving people a little setup for next week, because we hope you keep tuning in on iTunes or YouTube, folks. Cheap plug. Donate to the Cash App. Anyways, we're hoping that you're enjoying what we're doing for you folks, all right? And we hope we continue to allow you to enjoy everything we're bringing to the table here week after week for our podcast, all right? So once again, folks, we're doing this live. If you're getting some voices in the background, it's because there's people outside screaming, "I'm doing the show, shut up!" Anyways, all right, they're leaving now. Oh, yeah, it's the in-laws. Hopefully they didn't see me. That's all right. Yeah, never mind. Anyways, so back to focus, folks. We're going to be doing this every week for you. We're doing this every week for you, all right? So let's focus on this podcast, wrap it up, because I think I want to give you a little bit more about this documentary. I really think that, I don't want to wrap it up. I lied. I'm going to keep going. Ric Flair, the greatest professional wrestler in the history of professional wrestling. Back in the 80s, the NWA, he was the greatest name. He used to insult people. He would say, fat girl, pretty girl. He would always say he's the man. He hooked it up at a hotel. I mean, honestly, he lived a crazy life. He was the guy. He lived his gimmick. He lived it. Ric Flair went out and drank, and he partied, and he went out with women, and he womanized, and he did everything that gimmick was. Sounds very stressful, doesn't it, if you're a heterosexual male? He was also married, but we're not going to get on that. He was a very, very outspoken wrestler, and everybody knew when he arrived in the bar, that meant free drinks for a lot of people, because he just was a baller shot caller in the 80s, and he was his gimmick. And if you watch some of that old archive footage, you'll understand why I was so influenced, not to womanize, but to be as extravagantly loud and expressive as possible. And as a kid, I was. Still am. If you can't tell, I go through other levels now of maturity. Woo! That wasn't so mature, but I don't care. It doesn't matter. Sorry, Dwayne. Anyways, we're going to keep going, folks, because this tribute was 45 minutes, but it could have been 45,000 hours of tribute to this man. That's how much of an influence and impact the man, the legend, the limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, and put him to bed or some sort of nonsense. Woo! All night long. I don't know how many times I've used that line over the years. All night long. I've borrowed material. We're not going to say stole. I've borrowed material from the Nage. I've chopped endless people from high school to college to people I maybe shouldn't have chopped in a fight. Anyways, all I know is, I survived. Don't ask Bird about it, but I survived. Anyways, all I can tell you, folks, is this man is one of the most amazing wrestlers in the history of professional wrestling, where he could wrestle Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I sounded like I was from Canada. Nothing, no disrespect to you in Calgary, my friends. A boot. Yes, I know. Anyone from Calgary, you can hate me. I don't care. I'll tell you, that's how you sound when you say a boot. Chris Jericho, a boot. Everyone says, oh, it's a boat? I don't get it. It's about face. That's the military. Anyways. See how we get sidetracked? Because it's stuff, folks. It's podcast and stuff. Anyways, this is what's happening, folks. What's causing all this is Ric Flair. And his lines and his gimmick. He was there every day, 24/7. That gold belt, the World Heavyweight title that they brought over to WWF at the time in the early 90s. And it had to be video distorted because WCW finally realized, oh my God, he's showing our belt on their TV. You know how smart that was? And they should have let him keep showing it. Stupid! It's free PR. They stole your belt. Why would you be angry? You would hope that Lex Luger and Ron Simmons can say, hey, do a promo. This is our new real belt. You can keep the old one. You see? Start a war in the early 90s. But if I was writing there, we would have had a different scenario. But unfortunately, they got scared of the South, and they wanted to protect their belts. So they had put a legal junction where they, like a freeze, what do they call that? It's like a restraining order where they couldn't show the belt anymore. They stopped Vince McMahon from showing that belt, to my understanding. I could be wrong. But I think that's why they had to video distort it in the early 90s when Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair were building a feud to proclaiming the real world's champion. And where he would lose that belt, Hulk Hogan would his WWF title at the Survivor Series at the Greatest Challenge, which I just watched, where Ric Flair puts a chair and he tombstones him on the chair, but then he lost the belt on Tuesday in Texas. And that's about a few nights later because they wanted to keep a storyline going that Undertaker, maybe they should have the belt right now because we got this new guy, Ric Flair, who needs the belt. So we'll take the belt off the Undertaker and they'll eventually put it on Ric Flair at the 1992 Royal Rumble, which is one of the greatest Royal Rumbles that I could watch over and over and over and over, and I just not a glitch. I actually have watched that Royal Rumble that many times. It's one of the greatest Royal Rumbles in the history of Royal Rumbles. And I'll tell you, folks, we are very proud that we watched that Royal Rumble over and over again because the speech at the end is what puts the icing on the cake. That he says this is the only belt that matters, the WWF title. Do you realize when Ric Flair did that, he was spitting in the face of the NWA and the WCW at the time because that was their current name because that's what Ted Turner called them after he bought them. The NWA title, which was that belt that he brought over, signified a war in its own way without it being like the Monday Night Wars, which would be the 1990s. It took that long when they could have been building it the whole decade, a rivalry between two companies, and they want supremacy in professional wrestling. I'm taking you on a whole sidetrack here, folks. This is what happens on Larry's new wrestling podcast. This by far has been the longest podcast because Ric Flair has been wrestling for very, 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 very long time. So we're going to keep going, folks. Ric Flair's career is one of the greatest ever. And I tell you right now, I can't pay enough praise to Ric Flair for his influence in my acting life, in my performance life. When I did a play in high school called Red Rum, where it's a murder spelled backwards, I played a Sheik character, like more of an Indian guy. Because I could speak Indian. No disrespect to my friends in India. Anyways, that was my brief way of doing it, and that's it, we're done. But my friends in India, I played Sheik, or the Mr. Body. That was, eventually I played Sheik Hassan number one, because I'm Iraqi. I was an Iraqi Sheik. If there even such is a such a thing, I'd have to ask my mom. Anyways, the whole point is that this Sheik gimmick and this Mr. Body character kind of were all created from the Iron Sheik, baby! Number one. Anyways, but Ric Flair's influence was that he was Mr. Body. And I was doing this, like, dancing around like the Nage. Even though I was this Indian Sheik and I was being the over-the-top, like, character. You just had to be in there, folks. It was 2-day play, which was an improvised play, which I was embodying Ric Flair in the Indian body. I know that sounds twisted, but that's what it really was. Goody, goody, goodness. Anyways, my whole point is Ric Flair's influence is one of the greatest characters in the history. Like, I'm a character. But Ric Flair's gimmick, it was just so over the top, and I just thought that if I tried to act cool like Ric Flair, I'd get the girls. Boy, was I wrong. That didn't work at all. No. It made them actually run away faster. But let's not talk about that. That's a depressing subject. The whole point is this, is that we went into a level of success by, in our mind, at Great America, being the Troy. And I'm photographed all over, and I had this scarf, and I used to do this strut every once in a while. It was just a total homage tribute, an alien version of Ric Flair. Yes, an alien version. Now, you will never see that on Earth. Well, maybe we have. Maybe it's on YouTube at one of those horrible independent wrestling shows. Don't do it at the show, please. Don't disrespect Ric Flair and create an alien Ric Flair, okay? Don't do it. But someone's going to watch this podcast and go, that's it! That's my key to success. I'll be the alien Nate. And I'll come down and go, yee, like Mork and Mindy. Shit. Anyways. Damn, see how we get all over the place here, folks? On Larry's new wrestling podcast. I'm having fun. I hope you're having fun. Please join us on iTunes. Please join us on YouTube. Podcast is available on every major platform. You can find us on Instagram. Subscribe to us, Larry Lawrence Podcast. Please, folks, we're trying to build a following here. We respect what you do as fans, and you give us viewership. And we appreciate your loyalty, and we want to bring you the best show possible. I'm not doing this for just shits and giggles. I'm really doing this to create an opportunity for myself and to create an opportunity for us as the wrestling fan to pay tribute to the old school wrestling that really brought us in as fans. I really think that there's a reason why I'm a fan and how it's helped me in my professional life, how it's helped my personality, how I've always enjoyed being a character because of pro wrestling, because this circus show, because it was a part of a circus show, and this different, bigger than life. They had little people, midgets. They had Doink the Clown. They had garbage men. I mean, seriously, if you watch footage from the 80s and 90s, there wasn't a gimmick that wasn't created. Like the Goon. What's a hockey guy? Really? No, a hockey guy with an extremely angry hockey stick, but he can take away the ice skates and get in the ring and wrestle. You see, anything was possible in the World Wrestling Federation. It was what the world is watching. Not so much now, but it's still a big part of my life. And I'm really appreciative they're still trying to put on the show at the Orlando Performance Center. We all still need it, but the current product really is missing something, not just the fans, but it just needs a little kick in the ass, and I hope that we can find it once again, that we as a fan can go into the show and just give it something. Give it something like standing up for hours, hearing that wrestler's music pop, and standing up, like the glass break, or the I'm a Real American, or the woo, before even that woo one, he was just 2001 Space Odyssey. Doo, doo. I know I'm not going to hurt your ears, folks, but that's the one that Ric Flair used to come out to in the NWA. And during my senior assembly, I hate to go backtrack again, but during my senior assembly, I played Ric Flair. Yes, and this other guy played Randy Savage, who will remain nameless because he tried to ruin my relationship with my ex, which obviously that's why she's an ex. But anyways, the whole point is he was Macho Man, Matt was Hulk Hogan, I was Ric Flair, and we created magic at the senior assembly with scripts in hand, which we really sucked, but we didn't care because we really are one day rehearsed, and they expected me to memorize lines like that. They're crazy. And I didn't care because I was just Ric Flair, and I was having fun in front of my senior class, being the Nature Boy. And our senior assembly, you see, wrestling, and I didn't create that. The girls in our class, who really weren't very good presidents and vice president, you know, the people that make decisions in that student body council, which I never ran for. I probably would have lost anyways, or maybe got sympathy votes and been laughed at for trying to run for class president. Hey, Screech is running for president, let's vote for... Anyway, I don't want to digress. They used to call me something in high school. Never mind. Anyways, I don't want you to start thinking that when you see this show. He's no longer a part of our format. Anyways, if you missed it, it's okay. Let's focus. Ric Flair is the greatest professional wrestler in the history of wrestling, and I can tell you his influence is like no other. For a guy who rambles like me, for a guy who goes from one thing to the next, Ric Flair is one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time. And this documentary, this 24 documentary, is well worth watching because they don't even touch the surface of this man's career and his influence in the sport of wrestling. And I always say sport because these are athletes. They get injured, they get hurt, they get paralyzed, and they also die in the ring for the risk that they take. In one of our previous episodes about Owen Hart, I hope you watch it. It is also a reason why we watch wrestling, folks, because of the physical and mental sacrifice both that these men and women, little or big, make for you. Because they are midgets, and they are little. But they make the sacrifice to entertain you, the audience member, the fan, the wrestling fan. Not sports entertainment fans only, but wrestling fans. And that's why it's called Larry's New Wrestling Podcast and Stuff. And folks, I'll tell you, Ric Flair's career, it's over from the aspect of physical in-ring performance. The man's over 70 plus, and I would not want him back in the ring. I know he keeps crying that he misses his career, but sir, you've paid your dues. You've given us everything. Everything, sir. You have no reason to look back and regret your career. And that's coming from a fan who, your influence is like no other in my life. And I'm speaking from the heart. They call these promos. It's not really a promo. It's a shoot. And I'm shooting from the heart. And I'm saying this to every audience member out there. When I finally had the chance to, I stalked him in 1996 at the casino in Vegas. I was trying to find him so badly, and then finally a woman stopped him as he was leaving the bathroom. Like, I shouldn't even been able to legally be in the area that I was in this MGM Grand Casino in 1996, but I wasn't 21 yet. So I literally was getting photos with every wrestler that I could stop, who'd be willing to stop. And even once it didn't stop, I still went like this, like Mr. Wonderful, and I would shoot in his face because he was a jerk. Anyways, nothing against Mr. Wonderful. Sir, if you're watching this, no disrespect, but you wouldn't stop for a picture. Anyways, so the whole point, because he might come to my house and kick my ass at 87, because he's the old dude, and he's not 87. But anyways, he still kicked my ass even as an old man. Mr. Wonderful, no disrespect. Anyways, the whole point is Ric Flair. He came out of the bathroom. A woman said, "What are you trying to get a picture of that guy?" I said, "Yeah." She didn't know who he was. I don't care. She was drunk and a hot blonde. Anyway, she stopped the guy. She stopped the man. She stopped Ric Flair. I have a photo of her and Rick. Snap. Ric Flair leaves and walks away. True story. I didn't get my picture in 96. It wasn't until someone who wears pink and black and is one of the greatest people ever allowed me to go into a party in 2006, 10 years later, in Chicago. And I was able to meet Ric Flair once again, due to this man, and allowing me entrance into a party I probably shouldn't have been at. But out of respect to who I am and to who he is, thank you for helping me get that Ric Flair photo. He knows who he is. And anyways, all I know is I got a photo of Ric Flair now, and I'll show it to you next time. It looks like he found his long-lost child, which is horrible, because I'm like, he was so drunk that night, but he was so nice to me, and he was so giddy and so happy. I caught him at the right moment, and the picture looks like he found his kid. I'm like, that's not the Ric Flair picture I want. I want the one with the tough Four Horsemen one, where we look like we're the Four Horsemen, like I'm a part of it. But I get the one like, hey, you found my kid. It's okay. I still got it. I still got it. I'm not going to do the chant because I hate those chants. Anyways, I'm going to wrap this up, folks. I swear to you, this has been a way long episode of Larry's new wrestling podcast. We've been 40 plus minutes in. I was on the 40th anniversary Price is Right. Once again with Drew Carey. I didn't say anything wrestling related, but Drew Carey was a part of the WWF at one time, and there I was once again. And I was so happy. Please enjoy that moment if you want. I was on the show twice. There you go. You got my resume in a nutshell. I've been in commercials, Price is Right twice, and you're tuning in now to Larry's new wrestling podcast and stuff. I'm going to wrap it up, folks. Please, thank you for tuning in week after week. We're going to keep doing these things for you, the wrestling fan. I've really enjoyed being here today. Maybe you didn't make it to the end, but that's okay. If my editor feels like taking out less and making this a shorter show, that's up to him. But I think I enjoyed all 43 plus minutes of this, and I hope that you do as well. Bottom line is, watch that documentary about Ric Flair. No, he's the greatest professional athlete in the history of professional wrestling. Had the biggest influence in my life, and thank you. And I hope someday I get to interview you, sir. And I get to meet you again in person. And this time maybe because I have a press release to shake your hand to be interviewed for Larry's new wrestling podcast. Thank you, my friends. I was just thinking. Thank you. And I had a moment there for a second, folks. I didn't send you off properly. Everything that's going on in our world today, folks, I'm so happy you tune in week after week. And we appreciate you listening to us. But if you want to donate to that app, you know where to do it. Down below. But that's not important. If you do or do not. There's so many things going on in the world today. I want you to do me a favor. Stay positive. Be good to each other. I don't care what race, what face you are. Love each other. Be good to each other. And remember, it's simple. Our life is whatever you make of it. Just go out there into the world today and do me a favor. Simply make it a great one. Thank you for tuning in to wrestling's newest and latest attraction. Larry's new wrestling podcast. And for sure, we're always going to give you stuff. Thank you. Bye-bye.